This is Kanji in Danzan-Ryu Jiu-Jitsu. I'm your host, George Arrington. In this episode, we're again looking at the kanji from the Nage board, or the Nage board. And in part 3, we're going to be looking at techniques 11 through 15. The kanji for these techniques were taken from the scroll, or mokuroku, that was given by Professor Henry Okazaki to his students after they attained the rank of second black belt. Now, from this scroll, we can see one section right here that has the names of the techniques for the throwing techniques, the Nage techniques. In this episode, we're going to look at these 5 techniques. Okay, the first one we're going to look at is Ushiro Goshi. And we'll look at the hiragana and the kanji as before. Here's the hiragana, Ushiro, and that translates to this kanji, and it means behind, or sometimes they say back, although there are other words for the actual back of a person, but this means behind. And as we've seen in previous videos, koshi or goshi means the hip or waist. So let's take a look at this new kanji, Ushiro. Now, one interesting thing about most kanji is that kanji by itself means Chinese character. So all of these characters came originally from the Chinese language. And so in the Japanese language, there are several ways to pronounce a particular kanji. There is the manner of saying it that is similar to Chinese, and then there is a purely native Japanese way of saying it. The Chinese way is called the on yomi, or the on reading of the character. In this case, that comes from the Chinese. For this particular character, the reading would be either go or ko. Notice that the go is short and the ko is long. The purely Japanese reading is called the kun yomi, or the kun reading. And in this case, it is, as we saw here, Ushiro. Now, when you write it out, you could write it with the kanji for Ushiro and then goshi, but sometimes they will put a hiragana after a particular word to emphasize the actual reading of this kanji. So in this case, we have the Ushiro with a ro there in the middle between the Ushiro and the goshi. And this emphasizes that we mean Ushiro, and that way people will not pronounce it as ko goshi or go goshi, something like that. And also, just as another interesting thing, normally you will see, especially on the mokuroku scroll, you'll see it written vertically, something like this. So that's more of a handwritten kanji font, Ushiro Goshi. Okay, the next technique we're going to look at is called Seoi Goshi. And all of these kanji we've seen before. Se, that means the actual back, like the spine. And by the way, I look at that character and I actually, to me, I see that it looks like the vertebra of the spine. It's just a way of remembering the kanji. Oi means to carry. Oi, carry. So we have se oi. So this means back carry, to carry on the back. And now we have the koshi or goshi character, which means the hip. Now, an interesting thing about this particular technique, and in the previous video, we talked about the difference between the Danzan-Ryu Jujutsu techniques and their equivalents in Kodokan Judo. Now, so let's look at these in the context. So we have Danzan-Ryu, we call Seoi Goshi. If you were to show that to a judo person, they would say, "Oh, that's Seoi Nage." Or sometimes they might even say Morote Seoi Nage, although that's a little bit of a different technique. If you show Seoi Goshi to a judo person, typically they would call that Seoi Nage. Our technique in Danzan-Ryu of Seoi Nage, the judo person would look at that and say, "Oh, that's called Ippon Seoi Nage," or one-armed shoulder throw. So just be aware of that. That when you're doing these, and you and someone says show somebody who's in Kodokan Judo tells you to do Seoi, or asks you to do Seoi Nage, and you do our Seoi Nage, then they would say, "No, that's Ippon Seoi Nage." Anyway, just have to understand that there are some differences there. Okay, the next technique, Tsurikomi Goshi. Tsurikomi Goshi is written this way. First is tsuri, tsuri. If you were to write that out, it would be TSU, tsu, and ri, ri. Tsuri is the kanji which means to lift. So this character means to lift up. You would see this typically in hoisting up something with a crane. You lift it up. I always look at this kanji, and as a memory device for me, I see that right side of the kanji, and it looks like a fishing line. So you're lifting up something out of the a fish out of the water. Komi looks like this, and it means to pull. So together we have lifting and pulling, and that actually describes the way that this technique is done. You lift and pull, and it is a hip type throw. So tsuri, komi, goshi, lifting, pulling, hip throw. Now in Danzan-Ryu, we have the way we do this is typically we will grab the person's sleeve tips, pivot in, and do a hip type throw, usually from a deep squatting stance. And we call this Tsurikomi Goshi. However, in Judo, in Kodokan Judo, they do it a little differently. If you say do Tsurikomi Goshi, they will retain both hands on the front of the jacket, the left hand typically on the sleeve, and near the bicep, and the right hand on the lapel, and they'll leave those hands in, pivot in, and put their right elbow into the opponent's left armpit, and so that's called Tsurikomi Goshi in Kodokan Judo. If they see somebody do it with holding onto the sleeve tips, they would call it Sode Tsurikomi Goshi, or sleeve hip throw. And here's the kanji for sleeve. Sode is that kanji, and it means sleeve. So the 14th technique is called Harai Goshi, and both of these kanji we have seen in previous videos, but let's take a look at this, and we'll see something else that's interesting. So the hiragana for harai is harai, and the kanji looks like that, and it means to sweep. Koshi or goshi, the kanji is that and means hip or waist. And it can also mean loin. Sometimes they call this the sweeping loin throw. Now, something interesting about this particular kanji, the one for harai, is that it is a more complicated character, And in 1946, the Japanese Ministry of Education did a revision of all of the characters, and actually this revising of characters had been done previously a couple of times, once back in the 1800s and once in the early 20th century. And as a matter of fact, it has been done at least twice since then, once in the early 1980s, and as late as 2010, the Ministry of Education has revised the kanji. But in 1946, they simplified about 1,850 different characters and actually added some other characters as well. And the character for harai, to sweep, was one of those. So here is harai, and what it became under this revision of the Toyo kanji was this. And as you see, the left-hand part of the kanji, the radical, is the same, but the right-hand part of the kanji is a little bit simpler. It's just 2 strokes actually. So so that was the revision. Now a couple of others, one which is directly related to our Danzan-Ryu, the term Koden-kan, meaning the ancient traditions school, that was the name of the physical gymnasium of Professor Okazaki, used this character for den, ko-den. This den means tradition or transmission. So that character was simplified to look like this. And as you see, again, the radical on the left is the same. It's the right-hand part that's been simplified. Much fewer strokes on the character. And then one other that is known to many martial artists, and that is the word ki, and like as in aikido. And this character has basically a wrapper around it, and then on the inside, this little asterisk-looking shape is actually the symbol for rice. But what it became under the Toyo kanji was this. Instead of having the 6-stroke rice character on the inside, they have this X character. So that's some interesting things. So sometimes you'll see these characters written with the simplified characters, and if you're trying to translate the older characters and you only know the simplified characters, it becomes a little bit of a little bit harder to do. And finally, for this video, we're going to look at the technique hanegoshi. Now, when you learn hanegoshi, what is it that they tell you the meaning of this is? Well, oftentimes they'll call it the bent knee throw. So you do this technique with a bent knee. Well, surprisingly, it has nothing to do with the knee, although the knee is bent when you do the technique. Let's take a look. The hiragana hane looks like this, and it doesn't mean knee. It means to spring up or hop, to kind of jump up a little bit. Okay, so that's the kanji hane. And this one we've seen before, meaning hip, koshi or goshi. So hanegoshi does not mean bent knee throw. It means springing hip throw. And I have a picture here of me doing this throw on one of my students back in the 1990s, I think this was. And you can kind of see that I'm actually hopping off the ground in a position there with my knee bent. So the technique is done with a bent knee, but the emphasis is not the bent knee. The emphasis is the springing up. And just for curiosity, the word for knee is not hane. The word for knee is hiza, and the character looks like that one there. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and please check out my book, Mokoroku and Kaiden Sho. It's available on Amazon. And what I've done in this book is I've translated several of the different scrolls in great detail. I have an actual picture of the scroll. I have a printed version so it's easier to read. I have the way it would actually be pronounced and the translation. And I do that for several scrolls, and for the Kaiden Sho, which was a diploma that was given by Professor Okazaki in 1948 to some of his senior students. So I hope you pick that up. It's good for people in Danzan-Ryu, but it's also good for people in who are just learning Japanese, because there's a whole lot of information there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.